when you're standing in the middle of the grocery store on the on the vegetable aisle, canned vegetable aisle, and you come across a can of veg-all. For me, that's what it was, a can of veg-all. And I'm being triggered and I'm having a panic attack. I'm thinking, I've got to do something. There's something I have to do beyond whatever was given to me up to this point. I've got to seriously do something.
Getting freedom from pain is a concept that really resonates with me, and it was so wonderful to talk to Catana. She is a person who uses her art and a program that she's developed to work through trauma, work through PTSD, different aspects of things that just come back again and again, and conquer them. She's had a very difficult life, and we don't go too deep into that in this episode, but I highly recommend checking out her story on her website. There will be more information about that later, but let's jump right into this. Hello, Catana. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast. I'm really excited to share you with the friends that I've made on this channel. I know that who you are, what you have to share, and what you're doing now to help other people is really going to help a lot. And yeah, so I haven't recorded in a while, so if I'm a little bit rusty, that's why.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you.
This is the first question I have for you, is the series that I'm working on, Reclaiming Trauma. Do those words resonate with you, and what do they mean to you?
They do resonate with me, and it's interesting because, of course, we all have our own definitions of what things mean aside from their dictionary terminologies. And for me, reclaiming trauma is about reclaiming your inner strength from those extreme things that happen that are negative, to say the very least. The lowest negative vibration you can possibly get, and at times, having been that person that's, attempted suicide a total of about 11 times and thought about it probably two more than that. Yeah, it's about reclaiming the inner strength, and it is possible, so that you can have joy and peace in your life.
That's a powerful answer. That inner strength that maybe felt like it was gone forever, but it's not. There is still some, as long, like Dan said yesterday, if you're breathing, you're winning.
Absolutely. And I can look back now and think about many of those instances where I felt as hopeless could get, and see within that where I was helping other people to not feel that way and to have hope for the future, which is really interesting to me when I look back on that now.
And you have a website with a photography project on it that is very hard to experience, but that was a whole project of confronting your trauma, literally, like taking these images of abuse and actually purposefully setting them up to be photographed.
Yes, I have a photographic memory, so all of the experiences I have had come back, and it's like I'm there right now. So it's not only plays back in my mind, but it's like I'm there at that very moment. And even after 22 years of traditional therapy, I was still experiencing the PTSD from those things and smells and touches and memories that I couldn't figure out. I was like, now wait a minute, I've done this work, why am I still being triggered? I just didn't understand it. And when you're standing in the middle of the grocery store on the on the vegetable aisle, canned vegetable aisle, and you come across a can of veg-all. For me, that's what it was, a can of veg-all. And I'm being triggered and I'm having a panic attack. I'm thinking, I've got to do something. There's something I have to do beyond whatever was given to me up to this point. I've got to seriously do something. Well, I happened to be in college at the time getting my Bachelor of Art degree. I was in the photography program alongside painting and sculpture and all of the other aspects of what I was taking. And I happened to go through the process of getting a grant for my photography project, which I was going to use for my senior project. He wanted 50 images, and I'm thinking, good Lord, I have to come up with a project. But I was thinking, I really want to delve into this world of abuse, knowing that it doesn't just happen to me, that I had already reached that point, understanding that I wasn't alone. And that's sad. I know that, that we always want to know that we're not alone, but at the same time, when you consider what I've been through, that's sad, and it's like, we've got to do something. Part of it is speaking out. So this was my way of using my photography project in a cathartic and therapeutic manner, so that I could confront. And for me, it was a confrontation, because when you're being triggered, it's coming on strong. So I felt that I needed to come back equally as strong and go, what's going to push this out? What's going to make my response less intense? I figured it was to see it, talk about it, feel it over and over and over and over. So this was a 2.5-year project. And I went through writing about it. I went through looking at, my own images as they were coming up, and realizing that each time I did that, I felt less and less triggered by it. And through that process that I went through for that 2.5 years, that's what I have moved forward with now in what I do, working with people in my transformation art, the power of transformational art.
So you could experience, like, from the beginning of the triggering things, like, how long would it immobilize you? Like, what would a panic attack, PTSD moment look like for you?
Initially, it could be days, weeks, months. It could put me into a spiral that would last months. And it's not something I'm proud of. It's a process that I had to go through. And I went through being put in the psych ward at the hospital, because during therapy, they're like, please remember everything. We need you to talk about everything and don't hold back. We want everything. And that, of course, brings up those emotions that are attached to each one of those things. And you go back and forth between being angry or suicidal. Angry or suicidal, it's a very black and white world. It's negative, positive space. So when I created the project, to me, the photography made the most sense. That's why I didn't go with painting, even though I'd been using painting to express that same, modality of getting it outward. But the photography made more sense, because it was like, if I'm going to pull an image out of my head and show it to somebody, oh, it's like a photograph. Okay, now this makes sense to me. And then, having been through the history of photography and being advanced in the program where I was, I understand the benefit of, the document, and all of these things that we do in investigations and things. So at the beginning, it was very intense. And then each time it got less and less and less. Now I can actually talk about 99% of these things without any trigger. And there are a couple of them that I can talk about. And then if it gets into a deeper discussion about it, it can bring up feelings, but I'm not fully triggered by them. So it's a big difference, big difference.
did it occur to you that in this process it's for people to just put all of their trauma out there? It's just like ripping off a scab that's not ready to be ripped off, and art just kind of makes the process of going through it smoother for certain kinds of people.
Yeah, being an artist my whole life, since I was little bitty and could pick up my first pen, pencil, crayon, I was always creating art. So for me, creating the visual representation of things made the most sense. So, and the funny thing is that the grant committee, which the grant that I was receiving was through Academic Affairs Research Grant. And so this was not typical for an artist to apply for, research and academic affairs. So it was a big deal. And they asked me when I applied, can you explain why you're using art for this process? And of course, at first I was like, what do you mean? Why am I using art? I'm an artist. This, duh, you know. But as you will see on my website, I actually show the second letter and I get into discussing the therapeutic and cathartic process that it allows a person to go through, and that documenting of, what we've been through, much like a crime scene. It's really awesome. I've always been into forensics, but I also like to touch dead bodies, and that's another conversation. So I couldn't do forensics because then I get in trouble. My fingerprints would be there. But it just made so much more sense, and I did have to explain that process. Not everybody can handle that. We had other students that were like, oh my gosh, how can you put that out there? How could you put something so, it's beyond dirty laundry, it's like the ugliest, messiest stuff in the world. And it wasn't easy. And I did have some panic attacks, especially when I put it public. And it was being shown in the gallery and in a space where family could come in at any moment and see it. So it was a big deal. Now I can do this, and there's still steps that I'm taking, as I mentioned in another space, that it needs, I need to keep pushing through it, because the more I push through it, the stronger I get.
Yeah, it takes so much courage to tell your story, and like regardless of what people will think, when people are ready to make that decision to say, like, I'm going to name the abuser, I'm going to, if anybody's offended, this is the truth. And
Yeah.
I have so much respect and admiration for people who are willing to do that because they want to help other people get free, and that more victims of the abuser can feel confident to step forward and just like, stop the flow of motion, break that generational curse or whatever you want to call it. You probably didn't even realize, or when did you realize, this may be a better way to phrase it, that what you were doing in this project was planting that seed of the idea of how you could help other people through this process?
It would be when the grant committee asked me about that. What could you do further?
Okay.
We want you to further this. So it was a process of thought that was planted by them. So did I know right away? No. But I began to see it as I continued to have more and more exposure through my show being up, and then lecturing to different groups. So I even took it to a charter high school. So I moved it from just a typical adult space or college space, where actually the president of the university came in and ordered my show to be taken down, because, in the arts building, all of the arts are shared in that space. So you have the music department, you have the theater department, you have the visual and written and all of this in one space. They just happened to be having the jazz competition. So they had kids coming in from junior high schools, their families, people from all over the country doing this jazz band competition. And of course, including the college students, but most of them are adult age, so they don't worry about them as much. And I came in and my show was down, and I became very upset because I didn't want anybody touching my project. That was very time consuming. It's very delicate. It's expensive. It's all of the things mentioned. And it was because he didn't want to offend any of the jazz band parents. So that was one of my first experiences in that. And then it was taken over to the high school, to the charter high school. And it was that day that I think the light bulb went off, because the charter high school students received it very well. I actually, on the website, have pages that are there, and I may have them. It's been a little while since I checked, but I do have pages where they wrote to me after seeing the project.
Mm.
And a lot of them went, wow, I didn't realize other people go through this too. I didn't realize it could be worse. I'm grateful now for what I have. So there were all these different responses. And one of the floating teachers, as they call them, somebody that would go from school to school and help, he commented and said that, it was something that he would like to see continued, because it reached an otherwise unreachable audience. And I think those were the seeds that were being planted toward what I do now.
And it's also delicate and hard. Like there's a vast amount of people, sadly. Please God, don't let it be too vast, but like Facebook post, hey, all you traumatized victims of all kinds of abuse, where are you at? Let me help you. Like it's not so easy to find the people that you can connect with and to say, like, okay, you've gone through unspeakable things. It could be swallowing you up and making it hard to live your life. And and also artistic temperamented people, we're different. We see the world differently. We feel deeper. Highs are higher, lows are lower. Like, to find those specific artist traumatized people and say, hey, together we can get out of this.
Yeah, and I realized too, I'm just going to back up a little bit. Another spot that planted a seed was I was in my contemporary art class at the time, and that was where I had gotten the notification about the grant to begin with. But my class project, combined with what I did with that individual project for my photography class and receiving the grant for it, was to write a paper on the process of art as therapy. So not traditional art therapy in any way, shape, or form, but the process of art, because I recognized in myself that when I was doing, that was the therapeutic part. And when I was done, there was almost a depressive level. I felt so lost. I was like, I'm done. I got to do something else. But recognizing in that there was some significant movement and shifts for me emotionally, which were beneficial way beyond any kind of traditional therapy. And so it was all of these things combined, all of these different seeds, as I call them, and that were just going into this big box and, germinating and taking their time to come about.
So if you feel that you are a delicate person and don't feel like you're capable of looking at this website and looking at this photography project, I can say, you can help me say if I don't say it well enough, that you took items that were used to abuse you and you arranged them in the way that you saw them at that time. And so so looking at that picture, you're transported to that moment of suffering.
Yeah, and it's more like a captured moment out of a video.
Mm.
So, where I can remember, so when I look at the red suitcase with the roller skates and the peanut butter and the toothbrush and the dog leash, I remember how I packed up and packed my peanut butter, packed my roller skates, put my dog on the leash, zipped up the suitcase, and I was walking to grandma's house.
Mm.
Let's forget that it was a 16 lane freeway, you know, but it's that one of those, when you do a screenshot, that's what those are like, those screenshot moments. So each individual thing, and then there's the text that goes with it from
Mhm.
each one of the incidents, because there's 13 pages of timeline, and each one of those categories, each one of those ages that's in there, what I did is I allowed myself to access myself at that age through those memories that come up when I get triggered, and I just wrote as I did when I was that age. So the language, the spelling, I allowed myself to just free write. And that in itself, that's where the visual part and the writing part come together. And it's just but yes, it is not easy for some people. I know in the beginning it wasn't easy for me to talk about it openly without getting really emotional. Of course, I did have 22 years of therapy, and it was therapy that was ordered by the state. So, I was born and raised in California. It was California that came out and said, okay, now that you've been through this process, you need to get some help, or we're going to make you get the help, because you're too angry. And it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for anybody else. We're worried about you. So, and I have no regrets. At the time, it didn't feel that friendly and it didn't feel that helpful. But at the same time, look at where I am today. And so I'm extremely grateful for that push,
Mm.
because I might not have otherwise done it. And I feel like it's so important for people to know that are abused and have been through traumatic experiences. A, you're not alone. B, there are people you can turn to and who will help you move to that next space. And I know that we'll get into that more, but it's just not an easy step to take, but it's possible.
That's the most important thing, is the pushing. This is towards hope. And like I've had so many people share experiences on my channel that maybe other people just would not relate to, and like that's good. It's good to be exposed to things you can't relate to, because that's how you learn compassion. That's how you learn to step into somebody else's shoes, and the next time you come across someone in a similar situation, you can know how to treat them. I mean, no one person is a monolith and all that jazz. So ask them how they want to be treated, but you can at least go in with some degree of understanding and compassion that you might not have had.
Right, right. Agreed. I'm still learning stuff, and I love to learn more and more about everything, really. It's, you know, it's a very humbling feeling when you get to see and experience what other people are seeing and experiencing too. And I do want to add one thing, is that one of the surprise shifts for me is being able to forgive And this is something that has to come about in the last 2 years, because I used to think forgiving meant, here's the white flag, you win, I lose, I'm giving up. No, that's not it at all. It is it's understanding that we all come from a place of where we're at. We don't all have the same tools. I realize, I was diagnosed with life adjustment disorder. What that means was that I didn't grow up with adult guidance. I didn't grow up with those tools that a lot of people get along the way. So I was literally going through the school of hard knocks. So I was learning everything the hard way, and oftentimes banging my head into the wall over and over again. But I did the best I could with what I had, and recognizing that the people who hurt because they were there too. So I forgive people now that I never thought was possible,
Mm.
because I understand that their hurt toward me came from a space of being hurt themselves.
Mm.
And they were doing the best they could with the tools they have.
It's powerful. It's a word, the word forgiveness, that it makes, that's just like a knee jerk, either like, oh, never, or people who have managed to reach some degree of that is like, it's a release. You're not carrying them on your shoulders anymore. Like they're not your weight to bear.
I feel like I lost 400 pounds after going. The first one I did was with my mother. And the lightness, when they say it lifts the weight of the world off your shoulders, they're not kidding. It really feels that way. It feels, you go, I have COPD, and anybody who knows how it can be with asthma and COPD, that pressure, that feeling of pressure, that's just so heavy on you and you can't breathe. And when you go through the forgiveness, there's an entire forgiveness ceremony that I went through. Boom. And then I just got the goosebumps. And I recently did that again for myself. Wow. That was like releasing two people.
Hmm.
Just so much. And I'm looking forward to continuing that process, because I have 53 medical conditions. So there's a lot of stuff to go through there. And when we were asked to make a list of people, situations that we would want to forgive, and we were given 15 minutes to write that list, I came up with 57. So I can only imagine that there's more in there. But imagine that, like I just described, the pressure for two people. Imagine that times 57. So there's a lot to release. And the interesting thing about that, that's all trapped energy. And that's where my heart attack and bad heart have come from. It's where my high blood pressure comes from, my bad liver and pancreatitis, chronic pancreatitis. My health has been forever altered, because I believe I can heal myself back to a certain point, but the damage has been done. That's been done. I've had 26 surgeries. So the body has been through its traumas in that way. And I have fibromyalgia, which is a pain response from the brain. So the brain translates everything into pain. If it's a hug, it's painful. If it's a touch, it's painful. If you get stressed out, you're in pain. You swell, you get lumps in your arms and legs and body, and you have trigger points. And some people describe it like the flu on steroids. And I would say it's even more intense than that. But the good part is that as I learned how to do Reiki level 1, I'm a Reiki level 1 master now. As I began to understand the energy, so negative has its energy, and it can be as intense as positive energy if that's where the focus is. So as we release that,
Hmm.
we're releasing that from our body.
I've been fascinated with this whole concept for the longest time, that we aren't, so many people focus on just being spiritual, just a spiritual body, whatever. Like growing up hearing, oh, it's all just this attack from the devil and stuff. And then there's like the people that are only, it's only physical, it's all in your head, it's only medicine and doctors. And like, but we're both, we're spiritual, we're physical. Like the every what's the stress and the trauma affects us physically, and what we do physically affects how we feel emotionally. Like, we're complete.
It's what I refer to as whole body health, mind, body, and spirit.
I think now would be a really great time for you to, like we talked about, look at the camera, speak to the person that needs to hear what you have to say, and that can be touched by it.
Wow. Yes. If if you're, like myself, where thinking about those traumatic experiences that you've had will get your mind spinning, and you're having a panic attack, you're having trouble breathing, you want to lash out at people, you just don't understand why, and you know that you want something else, you don't want to feel that anymore, then the process that I work with is an option. It helped me, and I've been able to help other people move through that space as well. So I definitely would invite anybody that is experiencing these things, these traumas, these negative triggers, if you're, PTSD, trauma work, the power of transformational art can shift your life and help you reclaim that inner strength so you have more joy and peace in your life.
Yeah. That's something that's really special about being able to connect with people like you on in this podcast, is just to be able to put it out there. There are more options. You may think that you've run out of options and it's always going to be this way. Like, no, it doesn't. There's going to be somebody that you're just like, I feel a connection there. I want to connect, and they can, and you can move forward. It's possible.
Yes, and I always like to say that it's a safe and sacred space, and there is no wrong or right way to do it.
Mm.
So there's no judgment. It's a space that you move through, and it just helps you shift and reclaim that inner strength.
So
It's
it's like whatever art form they feel the most connected to, or even if they've never
yes,
picked up a crayon, like since they were 7, like wherever they are on that spectrum, if they're willing to try it,
yes,
it could work for them.
absolutely. I meet everybody where they're at, and I often say that even if it's just pushing your finger through dust, I can get you there.
Nice. Oh, I love it. That's something that I'm really passionate about. That art is something that is good for you. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm too tired to do this. Just like, get watercolors and just blotch some colors. Like, it's so freeing.
And people are often doing art and not realizing that they're doing it.
Oh,
Yeah. So like when you're doodling and you're talking to the bill collector on the phone, and you're drawing that little angry face, that's part of the process. You're still creating art, even if it's a circle with the little angry eyes, the little, the little unhappy face, it's, or when you're stacking stuff on your desk or playing. Now I like the playing with food. I'm all about scribbling outside the box, and there's a whole nother story to that, but I can remember everybody always saying don't play with your food. I love mashed potatoes. You can get real creative with mashed potatoes. Just saying.
And I'm always like, guys, stop poking your food. Use the fork. So you're not invited to have dinner with us.
Oh, I used to, yes. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Just kidding. If you ever find yourself on Gotland, you're definitely having dinner with us. Just no mashed potatoes.
Just no mashed potatoes. I can find other ways for them to get creative with their food.
So tell us about how we can connect with you. I know you also have a YouTube channel with the podcast on it. Is there what you I can put the words on the screen and in the description, and so you can tell us where we can find you to connect with you.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I'm on Facebook, Catana Malinowski, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, and I do post my podcast there, and I do often post my class flyers there. So there's even though it's just a little blurb, but you can also find me there. I do have a website, and I really invite people to take a look at www.katanasstory, and that's with two S's.com. Good, because that is the art project that I developed my process from, and it will help people see how that empowered me, which hopefully would inspire others to feel empowered to tell their story, because when we tell our stories, things change, people become more powerful, and it's the best thing ever. So yeah, and through my email, katanalmalinowski@gmail.com.
So if people wanted to just reach out to you and just to chat, they could just email you and you'd be okay with that?
Absolutely. And I realized I left out my podcast, which is Transformational Art with Catana, and that's also the YouTube channel, but it's also found on Podbean, Apple Tunes,
Whatever that Apple thing is.
Pandora, TuneIn, Spotify. It's all over. Yeah.
Great. I will include all those links in the description, so you can definitely check that out. And yes, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, taking this time. And I end my conversations by giving hugs. Hugs, hugging you, watching this. Thank you so much for watching this and sticking around to the end. I talk to all kinds of wonderful people here on this channel, and I do vlogs as well, sharing my journey of being an expat in Sweden and a mom, and just sharing happy memories of life in this journey of trying to follow my dreams. So I hope you will, if this resonated with you, I hope you'll subscribe, check out other conversations, check out the vlogs, and just become a part of my community as well. So yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Catana. Bye. If anything Catana said resonated with you, don't hesitate to reach out to her. All of her contact information will be in the description below. And if this meant something to you, please leave a comment for me down below in the comments section. It's always wonderful to know that we're making a difference over here.